Definitely our biggest book club session. We're collaborating with the History Committee today to honor our in-house book, History of the Irish American Home Society. Just a little background on this. I went to the book launch and listened to Maureen and talking about how she put the book together, and I said, we've got to do this for book club. I've gone through the book and it's wonderful. I don't know how many of you had an opportunity to go through it, but there's a lot of research in there. She really put a lot into it. We'll get to her in a minute. Because it's book club, I just want to talk a little bit about book club for the people who've never attended. We were established by Ann Purcell Murray in the autumn of 2020, right during COVID. My first meeting, I think, was the second book in, and that was on Zoom. So we've come a long way since then. Our books are only by Irish-born authors. And what we do in order to achieve a good variety of books is that in the autumn we pick themes for every month of the next year, and we make sure that they're a wide-ranging theme, and that allows us to pick books that, you know, we're not reading the same book over and over again with a different title. For January, obviously, we have a special event, and it's going to be including what we're calling the Great Story Swap. And the plan for the evening is to go, the book is set up by decade. So as I read the book, I made note of one of the major events. So we'll do a decade, I'll mention the event, and then the story swap will follow for every decade. If you have any comments or anything you want to say about it, growing up in Ireland, if you're from Ireland, the immigration process, how you got here, did you come by boat? Did you go through Ellis Island? You know, going back that far, or for the modern folks from Ireland, what's the experience like now for you? And then once you got here, how did you find out about the Irish American home? And what has that done for you and your family since you've been here? It's a lot there. You don't have to do it all. You can pick one topic. Growing up in Ireland. What the Irish American Society has done for you. It's totally open to everybody. I may make suggestions for people to as I go through, but anybody who wants to speak is more than welcome to. This is a story swap. And the reason why we're doing a story swap is, as you know, in Ireland, we were oppressed people. We weren't allowed to share our language. We weren't allowed to write down our histories. And the way that we did that was telling stories by the hearth, by the peat fires. And that went on for centuries. In our mythology, our heroes, our whole history traveled through that chain. And tonight is an opportunity to get a feeling of that and to be able to share your stories so that when we go home, we can tell some of your stories to our families. So I think I just think it's a wonderful opportunity. So anyway, to kick this off, I want to introduce Eric Marsalek, and he's our History Committee Chair, and I'll leave this to remarks that he would like to impart.
Thanks, Alan. As Alan says, my name is Eric Marsalek. I'm the current chair of the History Committee. I am following in the footsteps, the very large footsteps of the founding chair, Maureen, who will speak in just a few minutes. And we have many of the committee here to my right. And the way that this ended up working out is I think I was probably the only foolish one to say yes when Maureen said she was stepping down. And that's how now I sit here next to Alan and Maureen. But it's a wonderful group of Irish American Home members dedicated to this project. And I know that Bernie's going to talk a little bit about the formation of the committee. And then obviously Maureen will talk about the book. But it was, well, I was voluntold. I'm on the board of the Hartford GAA, and when this all started, we were essentially told that all of the satellite organizations should have some representation. And of course, the Hartford GAA agreed to that. And as many of you know, the GAA has been a formative presence here at the Irish American Home from the beginning. And so we believe that it was important. I have a little bit of a background in history, and the president of the GAA at that time said, you are going to do it. So here I sit now, grateful for the opportunity to work with all of these lovely folks here, and to collaborate with Alan on this has been fantastic. So we're grateful, and as Alan did, he gave a little talk on the book club. I will say that the History Committee meets the fourth Wednesday of every month at 7 o'clock downstairs. We would love to have new members. So if anyone is inspired by what they hear today, our next meeting will be in February. This is our official meeting for January. It's a nice little coincidence. So we would love to have anyone who would like to come. So I'm going to pass it off to Bernie, who was the president at the time that the committee was formed. And Bernie's going to give us a little bit of history on the History Committee.
Thank you. Would you like me to sit right here?
You can do whatever you
I think it's all right if I just sit right here. Is everybody cool with that?
Yeah.
Okay. I did have to put some notes together because I know I'm going to forget the point of what I want to make. So, but the Irish American Home Society this year will celebrate its 80th anniversary. And it will also celebrate its 58th anniversary here in Glastonbury. And we should really be so proud, but we should also be so humbled to be members of this organization because of the wonderful people who came through the doors, whether it was in Hartford or here in Glastonbury. These were people who worked so hard because they wanted to have a place to call their own. So we owe them, the people who came before us, we owe them a debt of gratitude. So I just wanted to make sure that that point was made. But also, if these walls could talk, you could only imagine the stories that we would hear. Someone said that it's probably good that they can't talk. So, but you know, many of you will be sharing your story about the Irish American Home or the Irish Club this evening. And before I make my very brief introduction on how we got to this point with the book club this evening, I thought I would say a few words about my thoughts on this organization. I'm coming up on 40 years a member here, and I've been involved in many facets of the club over that time. But I have to say that volunteering is so very, very important. And it's not just that you're helping out. When you volunteer, you become a part of this community. So it's not surprising that the Irish American Home has indeed become a home away from home or a second home to so many of our members. And I know that many share a very similar story to mine. I met my husband Brian here. He comes from a family of very involved members, beginning with the charter. We had our wedding reception in this hall, as so many others did. The Irish Club is ingrained and intertwined in our lives, and our daughter Maeve is a fourth-generation member who feels very much at home here. It goes to show that our founding members had tremendous foresight when they decided on the name, the Irish American Home Society. So what brought us to this evening? During the early stages of COVID, that name, that word that we don't ever want to have repeated again, when a loved one died, public funeral masses and wakes were not allowed, and that was the case for a period of time. How awful to not be able to receive or give a hug or a handshake in sympathy for that loss, to celebrate the life of a loved one. That is foreign to us Irish, but yet it did happen. When I began my first term as president in 2020, just after reopening from COVID, I was reminded of the members we lost during COVID. Not necessarily from COVID, but during COVID nonetheless. A loss of the person, but also a loss of history. With every member we lost, there went perhaps an untold history. Years ago, an officer position of the Irish American Home Society was that of historian. Since we no longer had that position, I felt it necessary to recreate a history committee. Brendan McCann, vice president at the time, suggested Maureen Skoranek to chair that committee. I wholeheartedly agreed that she would be a great choice, and she was. So the History Committee was formed with dedicated members who understood the importance of preserving our rich history. You see, the Irish Club is ingrained and intertwined in their lives too. And can I please ask the members of the History Committee to stand? I think you need to be recognized. Can you please stand? Through their hard work of collecting photos, data, memorabilia, etc., an exhibit was displayed at the Historical Society of Glastonbury over the course of 6 months in 2022. The exhibit was recreated in the fall of that year here in this upstairs hall during a special weekend. Afterwards, everything was boxed up or given to its rightful owner. The question then became, where do we go from here? As Maureen and I spoke, it became obvious that although it's wonderful to have pictures and stories digitized to view online, there is nothing that feels better than having a book in your hand. Sorry. So I asked Maureen to consider creating a history book of our beloved Irish American Home Society. I don't know what was going through her mind when I asked her to take such an undertaking, but fair play to her. She said okay and brought it to the committee. And the rest, as they say, is history. So I'd like to introduce Maureen Skowronek.
All right, good evening, everyone. I first would like to say that it was the whole committee that should take credit for this publication. Nothing is done in greatness unless it's done together. So I'd like to say that, and that's why I have him sitting here. But as I begin, Bernie brought up kind of the history of how the committee was started. And it was during a very difficult time of COVID, as she said. The club was closed, the world was closed. There was isolation, there was people that felt lonely, and I'm not quite sure how her thought process began in thinking, yes, we're going to lose a lot. So with that being said, the foundation started from our founders, and this is where it has brought us today. Without her ingenuity, a history committee would not have been. A book would have not been. So with that, I would like to thank Bernie for her intuition and the thought process of having this developed and has come this far. Thanks, Bernie. I'd like to also thank Mike O'Neill, who was president at the present time, who took over reins after Bernie's 4-year term. And he has been very supportive of the History Committee as well as the process of the book. So on behalf of the History Committee, I would like to thank Alan and the Book Committee for showcasing the history of the Irish American Home Society as the January Book of the Month. The history of our beloved home with the intuition of our founding fathers and mothers have provided the growth and success of our society as it is today. As the mission at its beginning, as it continues today, this is a home to welcome and bring together Irish and Irish American families and serve as a focal point for preserving Irish tradition, cultures, music, and friendship. I am optimistic this gathering tonight will bring interest of the history of the Irish American home to our membership, inspiring them to share their memories and stories that will add to the captivating history of our home. It is so important we do not lose the respect and knowledge for how our forefathers and mothers planted the seeds of the society in the 1940s and how we have seen over the years with respect for our forefathers and the nurturing and the volunteer work of our membership that our society has grown and will continue to grow. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Maureen Skowronek. I became chairperson, as she said, in the beginnings of 2021. And Eric, as he announced, he took over the reins in 2024. I am a first-generation Irish American. My mom, Eileen Malone Sott, was born in County Clare, Ireland. Having the opportunity at a young age to spend many summers in Ireland, I lived the Irish culture and heritage, and that became a big part of my life as it continues today. I have shared that with our family, our children, and our grandchildren. And the experiences of that you will share tonight, I'm sure, will show how your Irish heritage has changed your life, or has enlightened your life and your family's life. Writing this book, as I begin to tell you, was quite emotional. I was touched with gratefulness of our history. As we gather for many different activities, you are thankful and you appreciate the work, you see the work that was put into it. But as I researched since the 1940s, I was really touched. The Irish immigrants left their homes for a better life and opportunity, but they never lost the love for their family or their country. They brought with them their gifts, dancing, sports, music, literature, and what they did was in their faith, and the Irish appreciated of being accepted in America, and they wanted to share these gifts with the Irish Americans. And they also were appreciative and wanted to learn the life of Americans. They were eager to learn the life of Americans. I gained appreciation for learning of the founders' commitment and dedication for our home, and the desire to continue this dedication for generations, as we have seen our members do throughout the year, with respect again to our forefathers and mothers, facing challenges and celebrating victories. As our generations expand, it is consequential we continue not only sharing our heritage and culture, but to respect and call to mind our founders' intuition as they laid the foundation of our home. Many legacies are passed on through the years. Bill Carey, our first president, with founding members, designed the emblem of the Irish American home, as you can see on the cover of the book. This was to include an equal representation of the Irish and the Americans. The Irish were extremely appreciative to be part of this culture, as the Americans part of Irish American culture. So you may wonder, and Bernie was very kind in saying, Brendan, or she assigned me, I think, as chairperson. Well, how it really was, Brendan called me one day and said, do you think you would be interested in gathering names for someone who might be interested in the history committee? I said, sure, that's not difficult. Well, lo and behold, I ended up being chairperson. But that is okay, because the people that I worked with over the years, a tremendous group of people, they never left my side, and I never left their side, because I needed them. But anyways, the committee started, and the first thing we were to do was to start collecting data. We went to see what was recorded or collected in the Irish American home, and there was not much collected. No history was digitalized at the time, so it was all paper, and a lot of the information was destroyed or damaged due to environmental or some water damage. So as it was, we requested solicitation from our members, and we sent out messages through the newsletters, through the monthly meetings, for the collection of the artifacts, history artifacts, pictures, memories, something that would gain our history of the Irish American home. Enthusiasm came to the committee members as we were gathered together, and we worked together. And it was a diverse group: women, men, young people, old people, Irish, Irish American, representatives from the satellite organizations and the committees of the Irish American home. As I continued my research, not knowing exactly where to continue, I went to the Hartford Public Library, seeing that the Irish American home began in Hartford. I met with Maureen Heher, who was the director of the History Research Department, and she was a great resource for me throughout the whole project. There was nothing surprisingly written or collected on file about the Irish American home. She requested that I contacted the Hartford Courant, and I did, and they gave me access to the Hartford Courant, and I received a vast amount of information that was used for the history collection. Maureen Heher also thought it would be of interest to go to Glastonbury, to the Historical Museum, seeing that the club was now located in Glastonbury. So I went to the Glastonbury Museum and introduced myself to Rob Laughlin, who was the director, and he introduced me to the museum curator, Lynn Scarduzio. At that time, the enthusiasm came. They invited us, as Bernie said, for a 6-month display. Why this was so important is you can imagine the difficulty of trying to start the collection of history. This 6-month display gave us enthusiasm, it gave us strength, or it did me anyways, and gave us a push to continue the job that we thought would be never ending. As we continued collecting, as Bernie said, she thought it would be important because so many people do not use the web still as a resource. So something in hand, written in hand, she thought would be appropriate. Well, she thought something in writing, like a book. So brought this to the committee, asking for volunteers who would be a writer. No volunteers came, and let me tell you, I found out after, there's many people on the committee that know how to write a whole lot better than I do. But anyway, so lo and behold, I became what they're saying an author. And I must say I'm a novice. So where does this all begin? My first thought in regarding of writing, I thought maybe a story around the factual historical facts would be of interest. And so that's what I started to do. The only way I thought to organize this, again, was in decades, as Alan said. Knowing I did need to have the book printed, and I didn't know where to begin, I first went to Liz Saunders, who is the head of the 5 Cs, knowing that she has the parade pamphlet printed every year. She gave me the name of Elm Press in Terryville, and I contacted them and talked to a Charlie Hurd. My sister and myself went and visited him, and we approached him, gave our plan of what we wanted to do, and he was very accommodating. He really gave us a rough estimate of what it would cost. And then he did say, he brought me through all the different steps you would need in printing. Well, lo and behold, different terms like graphic designer, first of all, headers, setters. I didn't know any of these words. They became my new vocabulary. He also said that the graphic designer is very expensive, and he thought it would be most appropriate if we found a graphic designer on our own. He must have realized, as people are proficient in what they do, he must have realized that we were really far, far, far from publicizing. So, lo and behold, I have a neighbor who I know is a graphic designer, and I went and spoke to her, presented her what we wanted to do, and she received for her work $175 an hour. Well, the History Committee had 0 as a budget, so this was not going to work. So thoughts came about, and we knew the project was going to be definitely expensive, so I gathered a detailed proposal of the facts that I had received, and I asked John Gorman, who was a great resource during this whole process. I asked him to come in front of the board with me to present this budget. They were very welcoming, no questions. We did explain that the money would come back to them when we sold the books. So we were on our way. Each day I continued writing on the laptop, working on the project up to 6 hours a day. Again, I wasn't even proficient in the computer and the software that I had to use. Organizing materials, as I said, in decades, it made it easier for the readers as they were going to read the history. Many days spent with my poor husband by my side, encouraging me to do what I did not know what I was doing. He assisted me with the technical areas and the different softwares. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here tonight. He's at a previous engagement. A great surprise came when our friend, whoops, I'm sorry. I have to also tell you that I went to print what I was going to say, the notes, and we ran out of ink. So my husband, I called him, he's at a different thing, he said, I'm coming home. I said, no, don't go home. He said, well, there's an extra cartridge. And I said, good, I don't know how to change it. So there you have it. So please bear with me. So I told you, each day I continued writing. Monthly meetings were also a great boost of confidence, the committee cheering me on as I updated the project. The committee grew together with enthusiasm as we pushed forward. Still, I was aware we also needed an editor. A great surprise again came to the committee when our friend Danny Nolan, God rest his soul, came to the meeting and announced he would organize a sponsorship for the book. This he was definitely proficient at. So, with the assistance and organization of Eileen McCormick, the sponsorship was a success. Something Danny would always say to me, Maureen, if you don't ask, you will not receive. So with that being said, I was fortunate to have friends that I knew writing and they did editing. So I politely approached them and asked them. I can't be thankful enough for Danny Cronin, who I know he deserves more than a cheese pizza, Andrea Keith, and Kathleen Fitzgerald Chris. Tremendous work making my words as I just sat, making them really sing like a song, composed in. To involve the greater membership in our contest for the cover was included. Eileen Waller organized the contest, and the winner of the contest was chosen by the committee. Throughout the years, politicians supported the efforts of the society, and the committee felt, as the society was celebrating at that time 78 years, it would be appropriate to receive proclamations from our local politicians. Thanks to the efforts of John Gorman and Eric Marslick, they were received. This was not an easy task, as Eric would probably tell you. You have to go through a lot of red tape for proclamations to be received. My right-hand man through this project was Andrew Foda, an Irish American Home Society member, a teacher by profession, practiced in photography for many years. His photography and art talents were endless. There is no way this book would be successful without his talents. Andrew created all the collages in the book, and this was to accommodate the vast number of pictures we had accumulated. The pictures in the book tell the story on its own. He also reviewed each picture for quality and size before placement for the book. Andrew and myself interviewed many Irish American Home Society members, including our live-in presidents, that added great information to the document. Andrew added a link in the book for availability to view the interviews. Members of the committees and satellite organizations were asked to add statements of their respective groups, adding personal touches to the publication. At times, I woke up at night worried about items that I may have left out. And being a history book, I worried, is everything in the book 100% true? Many times, I heard significantly versions of the same event. Thus, the need to add a disclaimer happened. The committee chaired when we received notice that Mary Crombie of the Acorn Studios would accept the task as a graphic designer. As you can see, her work is professionally done and just beautiful. I spent hours organizing the placement of pictures and adding captions to go with the pictures with Mary. I spent many days sitting with her answering questions as she set the book, preparing it for print. She introduced me to all of the graphic aspects to the writing, as well as the many proofings and deadlines that would be necessary. The document titled The History of the Irish American Home Society is not a typical history book. It is more of a cultural society book that needs to be approached in a different manner, Mary would tell me. I would always say to her, "We can do this, Mary. We can do this." The committee wanted to have the books available for Christmas holiday. Now being the end of October, the committee and myself believe, yes, we will get this done. We could taste completion, but when told by the graphic designer and printer, hold on, we are not near being ready. The beginnings of the proofings had begun, never realizing how many there would be. Other things that altered the timing completion was Mary had gone and highlighted the names of the persons the first time they were noted in the book. And she thought to herself, would they like the names to be repeated, highlighted, as they were repeated in the book? The committee thought that would be of value. So that took a whole day going back and highlighting all the names in the book. You wouldn't realize the time that is spent, the time and efforts Mary did preparing, setting this book for print. The committee believed highlighting all the names throughout the book proved to be a feature that was appreciated by the readers. I met with Mary to go over the draft of the book for proofing. For at least a year, I had sat at a laptop submitting information day by day. All I could see were pages and pages of writing. I became overcome with emotion and even tearing up when I sat next to Mary and went through the book on the computer together. After her setting of the book, I could not possibly believe the end results, never to think it would be as professional and beautiful as it is. Bernie Foley and Eric Mazelik took on the challenge of proofreading. This being more than just reviewing to see if the words were spelled correct. We needed punctuation, grammar correction, page setup, and many other items that needed to be done. After proofing, the book went back to the designer, and she corrected what was necessary, and the book came back to us again as a proof. Another set of proofs came from the printer. When Charlie at Elm Press received the book for his proof, he was in awe. His expression was priceless as he asked, "Where did you find that graphic designer?" She is awesome. His company proofed it for picture quality and again, page set. Even though we did not think we would meet our Christmas holiday for book purchase, it was with the work of the committee, Mary and Charlie, that made it happen. A successful book launch took place with great celebration hosted by the committee in the Irish American Home. Bernie and myself were interviewed on Channel 30 the following day, revealing the publication. I believe any exposure of our Irish American Home is an opportunity to share our Irish heritage and culture. Never thinking I would be able to accomplish writing a book, I feel blessed and truly grateful for the committee's dedication and support and belief in me. A gift to myself, I dedicated the book to my grandchildren, as well as the past, present, and future members. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, Maureen, thank you very much for that. So as I said, the agenda is we're going to hit decades, and we're going to see if we can share some stories for those decades. I'm looking at the clock. I think we're pretty much going to be able to limit the stories to 5 minutes, if we can, and that should get us through most of what we have remaining. So we'll start with the 1940s. IAHS was established in 1945, as Bernie had said, which was 80 years ago. The charter was approved by the state of Connecticut on February 5th, 1947. The first president was William J. Carey. And one note that I wanted to say was that going through the book, and I've been a member of the club for about 5 years, and seeing people at our meetings and downstairs, I never knew how many people that I had talked to had been past presidents. I was amazed, and I have a feeling there's other people here who feel the same. So What I would like to do is acknowledge any of the IAHS presidents who have served by having them stand right now. And that way we'll get at least a little glimpse of who has put a lot of effort into this club. So if you could stand, please. And Mike.
Even though you're not past, you're president, you gotta stand.
past president.
Did I say pass? Well, Cora, yes, Cora, please, yeah. Okay. Our first location was at 1030 Capitol Avenue in Hartford. There is a building still there. As I was reading the book, I was going through Google Maps and trying to see what existed and what still didn't, or what didn't any longer. Shortly after that, the club moved to 593 Park Street in the Lyric Theater building. And that was the largest Irish American Home Society in New England at that point. We were on 2 floors, I believe, of the Lyric building. And I Google mapped that, and it is now a really beautiful library. The building is down, but there's a library there. It's the Lyric branch of the Hartford Library. As I go through these, I just wanted to pick up on some quotes that I found in the book that I thought were quite nice. There was a quote from Bridie Lucet McSwegan. I hope I get the name right. She was from County Kerry, or is, I'm not sure. She just passed? Okay. It wasn't until that morning I realized that I was really going to America and leaving Ireland. As the car drove away from my home, looking out the back window, waving to my mom, I said to myself, will I ever see my mom again? I mean, that's really touching. And then I have a quote from Eileen Maloney from County Roscommon, who we have here tonight. And she said, I arrived in New York on the official closing date of Ellis Island, November 11th, 1954. Remembering Sundays piling into cars to go to the Gaelic Park to watch football matches. Met great people, loved the music and dance at the Lyric. I wonder, would you like to share any stories from your experiences? Yes.
It's an honor to be able to speak here, but I just realized I'm older than the organization. I came in 1954, November 1954, and I'm from a family of 8. I'm the third oldest of 8 children. You know, I'm from about 6 miles outside Ballinasloe, between Ballinasloe and Athlone. I came from a wonderful family. I had a beautiful, gentle, wonderful father, a very go-getter mother, you know, not much sympathy, you know, and a wonderful grandmother that lived with us, and was my father's mother. So she was just such an influence on my life, and all of us, on all of our lives. She was just one wonderful woman. So that was a great beginning for me, you know, and a very organized home. But anyway, on November 5th, we all piled into a car. You know, it was, when one brother stayed home, he had to stay home to mind the house, as he used to say, you know. And the other crowd of us all got in the car. I don't know how this happened now. And we drove to Cove from, you know, where Ballinasloe is, up there, you know. And all my brothers and sisters, except for one, you know. And drove to Cove, because I was leaving on whatever ship was at that time. And you know, my memories of that is, you know, arriving in Cove, and you're in a big old hangar. I don't know if anybody else here came from Cove, you know. But you're in a big hangar, you know, and the ship is out there on the water, you know how the foghorns are going, you know. My father said it was the worst time of his life to hearing that foghorn going out there, you know. So, but anyway, I left, like you know. Well, why I went to America, people asked me that, you know. Actually, I just took a notion. We had people, cousins who came home, you know, from America, and I had an aunt in America who I never saw or never knew. And there was lots of people in the parish who came back and forth from America and from all over. So, you know, I had a nice job. I had the privilege of going to boarding school. At the time, most of the girls from around cycled to the secondary school. And after I graduated, after I left secondary school, I got a job with the civil service. I worked at the GPO in Dublin. I was a telephonist. Most people don't even know what that is, except if you watch old movies, you know, the clubs, you know. The telephone operator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Telephonists, that's what we were called. Yeah. Yeah. So I worked there for 3 or 4 years, but then, yeah, you know, I just took a notice. I think I'll go to America too, you know. So, off I go. But anyway, I arrived in America, in New York. I had an aunt here who sponsored me, which was the way you had to come. And she was Eileen also, my Aunt Eileen. I met her in New York. She was an old-fashioned kind of woman. You know, the kind, you know, when some people who never progress with the country they left or the country they're in. So that was my aunt. Yeah, yeah. And she was, you know, I knew nothing about New York, actually, and I think she knew less. But anyway, we made our way to, I suppose, Grand Central and took the train home to Hartford. They lived up in the north end of Hartford. Yeah. And of course, it was about 9:30 at night, and she realized the buses had stopped. That was the only transportation. We had to get in the bus to go to Clark Street. So she was a woman who had no qualms. She didn't mind what she did or who she asked anything of. So we crossed the street anyway, and the next car that came along and stopped at the light, and I knocked at the window and said, my niece just arrived from Ireland, the buses have stopped running, and, you know, could you give us a ride up to the North End? Yeah. So that was my introduction to America. we came to the North End anyway, to the family. We had 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls, all younger than me. I was 19, and they were all younger than me, so it was a rowdy kind of house, a disorganized house. But anyway, it was good. But the day after, she walked me downtown to get a job. You know, there was no hanging around. And I got a job at the Travelers. So I was there for a few years, and then I got married and my children all through the 60s. So, but then she also, you know, I lived in that house for a while, but she knew there was a firehouse up the road, and she knew there was a couple of Irish guys who worked there. So she went up and asked if one of them would take me to the Irish Club. You know, so he did. You know.
And that was your first time at the Irish Club?
It was my first introduction to it, yeah. And like I said, it's hard to believe just what you said, that this was the biggest Irish club in, what did you say, in the country or in the...
New England.
In New England, that's hard to believe. Because this place, it's 3 floors, you know, the dance floor, and it was just a small, it was couple of band leaders, you know, Johnny Key, Larry Moran, and probably some of you know those people. And I thought it was, this is America. Because in Ireland at that time, it was the year of the big band, and we had beautiful dance halls.
Yeah.
Everywhere, even every parish had a dance hall. And we had the big bands from all over. You know, so we had wonderful ballroom dancing. We'd love to dance. Yeah. So anyway, I got there, so they played nice music, you know, we did it all. And after a while, I met another Irishman from County Mayo, Richard Maloney, and he was a little dancer. He was good looking too. And so that kind of, we got married. That's the next story. We got married. But during those years, you know, going down to Gaelic Park in New York, you know, it was a trip. Somebody had a car, so all of them would pile into the car, you know. Yeah. And I don't know how it happened. I mean, nobody had GPS naturally, or you know, where they were going if we got there. And on Sunday mornings, I just want to mention this. This was the routine that we went to Mass, you know, I don't know if it's St. Patrick's or the Cathedral or one of those churches right there in the heart. Most of the Irish lived around that area at that time, including your mother. Yeah. So we go to Mass. And then the next step was we went to O'Connor's Bar in Albany Avenue. You know, we went there to have a few drinks. And then we get in the car and start off for Gaelic Park. And then you had to stop along the way just before we got onto the Merritt Parkway. There was a bar there called very good. Yeah. But just to mention the club too, for just 1 second. It was 3 floors, like you said. The dance hall was on the 3rd floor. The bar was on the 2nd floor. So the bar closed at 9:30. So then they all came up. Because mostly who was up there beforehand were the women or some people who happened to be teetotalers. You know, so all the men would come up there at 9:30, you know, and then we danced maybe till 11. You know, so, yeah. And we went to lots of dances. We went to Manhattan to dances. In my mind now, I think, how the hell did we do that? You know, drive down to Manhattan and went to some of the big halls there. We went to Far Rockaway to dances and to weekends. We went to Dudley Street up in Boston. We used to go there to ball games and to dances on Dudley Street. So, the letter dancing, it was not a good thing. Most of us, I was a teetotaler myself, so, yeah. Anyway, I got married, my 5 children, and then I was away for quite a while. I was away because in the 60s I had my children, and in the 70s, and then I ran into a little trouble in my marriage, so it took more time than that. So, but eventually I got back into the club here, so delighted about that. I love to come to all the organizations. I belong to the book club, I belong to the poetry club, so I'm just blessed, and honored to be part of it. Such a beautiful club, Wonderful. And thank you, Maureen, for the wonderful history.
Thank you so much. Wonderful stories. Okay, so where are we? We are at 1950s, and I'm going to start with a couple of quotes from our members. From Pat Mahoney, County Kerry. "Oh my God, this is America. I love this club." From Brendan Downs from County Clare. Coming from West Clare to America was like going to paradise." So in the 1950s, we had another new location. It's 69 Grove Street in Hartford. That was in 1955. And that was when the Ancient Order of Hibernians began holding meetings at IAHS. So I thought we might have a little questionnaire at this point for those of us who were born in Ireland. And this is going back a ways. And a lot of these questions relate to books that we've read in the past, so they may not be relevant because we do read some fiction. But one of the stories that we had is when the electricity came to town in Faha, which is, I think, a fictional town. So does anyone here remember when electricity came to town?
Yes.
Yes.
When I left Ireland, we did not have electricity in our area. I said, when I left Ireland in 1954, we did not have electricity in our area. It's when I went back in 1960 that they had electricity. They were putting the poles up at that time.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that story I talked about is This Is Happiness, and it's the story of introducing electricity to the town. It's quite interesting. And it's just a lot of humor. It's a wonderful book. The book that we're having next month is called Time of the Child, and it's the sequel to This Is Happiness. So if anybody wants to join us, you're more than welcome to come to that. And you don't necessarily have to have read the first book to enjoy the second. Other things were plumbing, possibly. Was it anyone experience outdoor plumbing? Yes.
Even on vacations.
Yeah. How about farm equipment or lack of? Did anyone work with horses or donkey carts? We read a book called Sanctuary, and it's about all the donkeys. When the mechanized farm equipment came in, the country had a lot of donkeys that needed foster care, and that's what Sanctuary was about, because people were just giving up their donkeys, and there were quite a lot of them. So, does anyone remember cutting turf by hand?
Yes.
Did you harvest your own potatoes? I know you're going to get a lot of those. Yeah. How many walked to school? That's not even only Ireland, but how many walked to school? Working at a young age? 12, yeah. And I know Eileen has immigrated to the U.S. on a ship. I think you're the lucky winner. So I thought that would be fun to go over that. And does anyone have any memories from Grove Street that they would like to share?
There are a lot of people who find it difficult to believe, who are not part of Irish childhood, and that is, we grew up in bars. And we loved it because we got Coke and potato chips. And we would come downstairs on Grove Street after our dancing lessons, and that was our Friday night. And if you got money to put in the jukebox, it was a special event.
That was good. And you also, I'll add to it if you don't mind. I just remember that when we were there, and I'll just add to Ian's thing about being Irish and the kids, we didn't have babysitters. So we all went to the club. If our parents went to the club, we all went to the club. And if you were tired, you just had to put a jacket over you and go into the coat room. We were in the coat room, but also booths. On the booths, and just sleep until we wake you up. And it's like, okay. There was many of us.
Thank you. Anyone else?
DCF call.
No
DCF calls.
Well, my name is Kathleen Naughton Connolly. I am the daughter of Irish immigrants from County Mayo. My father arrived at Ellis Island in New York around 1928, and my mother came in around 1930. They met and married several years later in New York. And due to the Depression, there was little work. My uncle lived in Rockville, Connecticut, and told my father to come down to Hartford on the train and to get over to Pratt & Whitney, and that he would get a job there. My father did do that. He got on the train and left my pregnant mother back in New York and got to Pratt & Whitney, and he was hired right away. And he got very worried when he was hired because he had no place, there was no place to stay. He mentioned it to the woman that was filling out the forms for him, and he said, "Where can I live?" And she said, "Well," she said, "Were you in the Army?" He said, "Yes, I was." And she said, "Well, you walk down about a mile and a half, and there's a place called United Homes in East Hartford." And they were old, they were a barracks-like, and all the soldiers did training there. And now the town of East Hartford was renting them to veterans. So right away he walked down, he got the place to stay, went back to New York and packed up my mother. And the rest was history. Now, my mother and father never went back to Ireland after coming in that time. But they decided that they needed to to go back. And in 1953, they took my brother and I, and we went on the ship and landed in Cove and had to take then a tender off the ship into Cove. And we met my grandmothers, 2 grandmothers, and all my mother and father's brothers and sisters. Their fathers had already passed away. So we never did get to meet them, to meet our grandfathers. Now, I was 8 years old, and my brother was 9, and I was kind of I sang. I like to sing. And before I left, my mother said, "You better learn the song, because you're going to be asked to sing it over there." And the song I learned was, "How much is that doggy in the window?" Well, every place I went, wherever we went, they wanted the little Yank to sing the song. And I wasn't shy, so I did it. But then, every place we went, there was set dancing. I loved seeing my mother and father dancing. They were singing songs all the time, and I wanted to learn an Irish song. So the song I learned was Noreen Vaughan before I left Ireland. Anyways, we went all visiting relatives all over. There were parties all the time because it was a big thing at that time to have the Yanks come home. And when we got back, I said to my mother, I want to do dancing. I want to do dancing. I have to do dancing. And I guess, I don't know how long it took, but she finally found some place to go. And that was Grove Street. So we took the bus, and it was on Sundays. We took the bus from East Hartford every Sunday over to Grove Street for dancing. And I fell in love. And dancing has been in my heart ever since. And I can still do a few. But the Irish Club was a place I have met lifelong friends that have passed away even, and the love in my heart for the Irish Club. Even though I was born in the United States, Irish step dancing is right in here, always will be. So I thank the Irish Club for all the benefits it has given me. I found my husband too. Unfortunately, he did pass away, but he's listening to me now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to hop into the 1960s. A couple more quotes from Sheila Glynn Privatera. For me and my parents, the IAHS was a warm embrace. And from Joe Malarkey, the Irish American Home Society was to become the gold standard for an ethnic social club. So, we moved again. We moved to our new and current location, 132 Commerce Street in Glastonbury. We had requirements. We needed a large dance hall. Here we are. We needed a separate lounge and bar and a kitchen. And the dedication was February 3rd, 1968. 1960s had a resurgence of the arts. The Hartford Fesh was established in 1966, and the years that followed, we would go upwards of 800 entrants and 3,000 guests. There was competitive step dancing and music, and also something that I never knew we had, and I think it's wonderful, it'd be nice to get it back again, is the Gaelic Choral Group. It was formed, and the youth would sing in Gaelic and English. First place, they won first place in Hunter's College Fesh, and they opened for the Clancy Brothers at Carnegie Hall with the Mulcairn Dancers. And the other, some are here. Is that where the chuckles are over there? Wonderful. And also the Kathleen Connolly School of Step Dancing was established in 1965 with several other schools following. And I was going to get you for this, but I think you already spoke unless you had anything else to say about the actual school.
Well,
She might get up and do a jig.
I've seen Noreen Vaughn.
yeah, Noreen Vaughn, Noreen Vaughn.
I might remember the dog in the window better. No, I took from Kathleen Mulcairn. That's who I started with back 55, I think. And I did it all the way through. And then finally, Kathleen Mulcairn was couldn't be making the trips up to Hartford as much as she did. So I opened the school myself, and we had a lovely group. We went to all these ones. Went to all the feshes, performances, all around. It was a great time. I think everybody enjoyed it. It was not like tension of the way it is now. I mean, we had so much fun going around doing the dances, and it truly is a great thing that you can get into something like that, knowing that this is your culture, this is where you came from, and to make so as I said before,
something that will always be with me as long as I live. And I enjoyed it to the fullest. Thank you.
Okay, now that brings us to the 1970s, and what the big, oh, I'm sorry, was there more? I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to,
I also want to be sure that before everybody leaves here tonight, there is an understanding for those who weren't around when this club was built. And the reason that I say that is because my father, John O'Keefe, and a number of other people, Jimmy Golden and Dave McLean and Al Sott and a number of very, very dedicated people would be here every weekend doing construction. And they went home to some aggravated wives some nights. But I remember the day that my father came home. He had been president of the club. And in one day, they basically put the whole roof on. That's how many guys were here doing the work. And they really, I think that sometimes gets lost, just how much of somebody's, I guess, life gets put into something like this. So, and of course, the women who were there also, at the beginning, everybody who worked in the kitchen, they were not caterers. They were members of the club, and they came and they worked for hours on end at Fesh's, etc. So I just hope that that kind of sense remains with people who keep coming here, that this building is here. And also, we sometimes have this idea that things happen like in a fairy tale fashion. Well, I remember on Grove Street that there were huge arguments about whether or not they should leave the city of Hartford, because they thought the world began and ended in that city. But to get this land at that point in time was quite an accomplishment for all of them.
Anyone else about the building? Nope. Okay, we'll move on to the 70s. 70s brought the first Hartford St. Patrick's Day Parade in 1972. It was reorganized in the 1990s by the Central Connecticut Celtic Cultural Committee, the 5 Cs. They were formed as a nonprofit and charitable organization, and what they honor a person of the year, a grand marshal, and pre-2000 there was a parade Colleen, and it's been televised on Fox 61 since 2009. Liz Saunders, chair of the 5 Cs, had a quote in the book: "It is important that we push ourselves beyond the confines of our generation and learn and grow together by sharing stories, insights, and perspectives." So tonight definitely is doing that. I open it up to anybody to tell some stories about the parade. Anybody march in the parade?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Marsh danced,
Yeah.
made floats,
Made floats.
we did a float.
Days.
We did a
Yeah.
float about
Flowers
bringing home the turf from East Hartford. Yeah.
Okay, I can move on to the 80s. So the 1980s brought our first woman elected as IAHS president, and that was in 1988. And just out of curiosity, would the first woman president of IAHS care to stand up? Sorry, I lost my mic. I have a quote from Cora in the book, and that is, "Life is a combination of trials and errors. We make the best of what we have and enjoy it." I want to give the opportunity for Cora to tell anything from her story, whether it's Ireland or from her time as president or whatever. Would you like to? Okay.
is Cora Dunning. In May 1958, I came to America. I was 20 years old. I had a cousin, my father's daughter, who had come to America. She married an Irish-American fellow whose parents passed away. And when they did, the children were going to be put into an orphanage. And they had a relative in Ireland, and they offered to take the children and bring them to Ireland. This was in 1947. They went back to live in Ireland. There were three children, a girl and two boys. My cousin, my first cousin, she was an Irish step dancer. Her mother was a violinist at the Mansion House in Dublin. So she was dancing from the time she could stand. And by the time she was 17, she had all of the exams done to teach the teachers. So when she was at a fesh, she met Jimmy. And he was there and asked her to dance. And she danced. And they got talking, and she told him, he told her, I should say, what happened, how he came to Ireland. And she went home and told her parents. And her parents said, well, if you see him again, invite him to come home. And he hated it in Ireland. His uncle in Ireland had a large farm, and they had two children, and they were in medical school in Dublin. So what happened was the kids were working on the farm and they knew nothing about it, and they considered that to be child labor. They didn't, they just didn't know where to start. So what happened? She did see him maybe 2 or 3 months later at something, and she invited him to come home. And when she came home, when he went to her house, her brothers were there, and he was telling the story. And the father said, the father didn't have a car. They had no car. They didn't even own a bike. And they said, look, we're going to help this kid. He needs help. So they borrowed a car from someone, and they took him up to the north of Ireland and let him sign up with the American Army to come back to America. And that's how they came back. And he came back to America, and his brother did the same thing, and the sister a couple of years later. And they were riding back and forth, and he went back to Ireland, and May and him got married. She came out to America, and she joined the club and opened a dancing school. And that was the beginning of it. And her and her husband were the two people who sponsored me to come to America. And the first week I came, I joined the Irish American Home Society. And I've been here ever since. And it's been my life. I've met some great people. I've had some great times. I met my husband here. He was a coach builder. He served a 7-year apprenticeship in Ireland, building coaches. And he emigrated to Canada, to Ontario. He was in Ontario. He got a job working for Massey Ferguson. And in order to go to Canada, he had to sell his bicycle and borrow the rest of the money to pay his fare. And that was the story there. I started to date him. We were going together. And he was a neighbor of mine in the old country. But I was an only girl with 2 brothers. And my mother never let me out on the street. And when I was coming to America, all I was getting told was, you don't get into a car with anyone. You don't go anywhere with anyone that you don't know your way back. Don't you go anywhere. Don't you mouth off. Don't do this. Don't do that. years old. A factory opened up across the street from my house, and they made nylons. And when American nylons came into Ireland, one of the owners was an American man and the other was an Irishman. And Ireland being what it was, it would be raining quite often, and my mother had a rubber mat that she used to roll out in the hall. And she'd tell me to open the door and let the people stand in the hall out of the rain. And Mr. Gately, the Irishman of the two that owned the factory, he drove a Zephyr car, and every so often he wouldn't have the car. And he used to stand in the hall, and he would say to me, now if you ever want a job, all you have to do is cross the road and come up and see me. So I got really cocky, and if I did anything wrong or got told off or was in trouble at home, I'd say, I can go to work tomorrow if I want to. And that's what happened. So I started to go there on Saturday mornings after school. And I learned how to do invisible mending. And I'm so good at it because I was practicing like morning, noon, and night that they put me on piecework. And I was, I'd be doing this like crazy to get the money. And then my mother went out and bought a sewing machine with the money I earned. And she bought straw, and she had me making these Easter bonnets. And my mother had a friend who had a relative that was a buyer for Woolworths. And he took the bonnet and took it in and showed it to the buyer. And they gave me an order to make the bonnets for a gross of bonnets, which was 144 bonnets. And she had me up until 4 o'clock in the morning sitting at the sewing machine. And she'd say, just keep going, we have to take the sewing machine. So that's how I grew up. But then I came to America. And that's, I had a lot of drive. That's all I can say. My first job, I got a Social Security card. My first job was a trainee buyer at Sage Allen's in Hartford. And John Gorman at the time was working in Sage Allen's also. And I liked the job, but I didn't like it. And Mrs. Sock, you know what I'm talking about now, Mrs. Sock came in one day, my third day there, and she was I was working in lingerie on the second floor. And I said, can I help you? And I was showing her and measuring her and all the rest of it. I was busy bee. And she said to me, are you from Ireland? And I said, I am. And she said, when did you come over? And I said, just a week ago. She said, what? And she told me how she worked at the bank. And she said, where are you living? And I told her. And she said, write this down. And she told me who she was, and she worked at the bank. Now, she said, when you get paid, she said, you come into the bank and you're going to open a bank account with me. And I did. And when I'd get paid, I'd go into the bank with my paycheck, and put it in the bank. And then I went and got a part-time job. Then I had that, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I'm going to try and get a job doing something that I can make a living at. So I said to Jimmy Duffy, May Duffy's husband, could you get me a job in the First National? Well, he said, I could bring you up and you could apply. So I went and applied for a job, and I got a job there in the bakery, and I worked there for 17 and a half years. And in the meantime, I went to Hartford Public High School, Nell Foley, Maureen Kennedy, a group of us, and graduated from Hartford Public High School. And then I went to UConn and took a real estate course after that. And I got a real estate license. And I went into the real estate business. And I bought some land, and I married my husband. And he was a coach builder. He could work, you know, you name it, he could make it. And I had the real estate license, so I bought land and did a subdivision, and then bought 2 family houses and stuff like that. And that's the story of my life.
Thank you very much, Dora. No, it's wonderful. Are you kidding? Let's see. The 1980s, I had to put 2 big events because the second event was the Glastonbury Irish Festival. The first one was July 1984. It was an annual 3-day cultural celebration. Actually, a traditional Irish cottage was erected with a thatched roof, and annually it was whitewashed with lime. And it received as many as 20,000 visitors over 3 days. And I'm sure you folks have memories from the Glastonbury Irish Festival. Any that you care to share?
We don't, Joe.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Joe O'Connor. Yeah, a lot of great memories. You know, it's interesting sitting here, and I don't realize how many people I have not seen in a long time. Mrs. O'Keefe, or
I'm married to him now.
okay, well, O'Keefe, right? So Angie, I remember your mom, I remember your dad, and my father were good friends, and we used to go out. He had a travel agency in Wethersfield when we were kids. So, you know, it's just a great honor just to be here to listen to all your wonderful stories. And, you know, again, thanks, Maureen, for what you've done in your committee. And Maureen's mom and my mom and dad were very good friends. There's a lot of things in this room that I look at around and see how many great people, Seamus Danaher over there, Mike Eileen, and all the great people that have done a lot of work in this club. Miles McGee, who worked with my dad, good friends. So, you know, Bernadette, and a lot of us that we're the same age now that grew up in the 80s. You know, I was very instrumental in playing the Gaelic football. I was president of the Gaelic Football Club. A lot of great friends. Savage brothers were good friends of us. We grew up with them. I don't know if you know that Mr. and Mrs. Savage were from the north of Ireland. They were very, very instrumental people. You know, if you were here in the 80s, the Savage brothers were the band to see, you know. Saturday night, yeah, Friday night, Saturday night, this place was rocking.
And Sunday with the kids.
Yeah, I did. I met, you know, my lovely wife there at one of those festivals. But the fondest memories I have at the festival were gentlemen like Tom Staunton, Neil Quinlan, Mike Connolly, who put together everybody, the effort that was given by everybody pitched in to make that event happen. I was heavily involved at the Gaelic Football Club at that time, and we had 2 great events there. We had a dunk tank, which that was a lot of fun. A lot of people. The hardest thing was trying to get you know, beautiful ladies to get up on and to get dunked them, but we got more clowns, more drunk Irishmen that we could share those, you know. But the other thing we had was the money wheel. So we made a lot of funds were raised for the GA at that time, and it was just a great event throughout the years, and it was it had a really good run until, I don't know when it stopped, but it was the party of the in August, in July and August. So those are my fond memories of the festival.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. The 1990s, Krieger Lane parcel was purchased in 1999 from Monaco's. And then it was a decade where it was very obvious that the IAHS was sharing its Irish culture with growing families of Irish American children. I have a quote from a member, from John Droney, County Clare. It is important to know the culture from our past. I hope the club continues to support our Irish heritage with talks of our Irish history. I have a quote from Maureen, which is, "It is with love that we share our Irish heritage and culture with our families, leaving a lifelong impression of a shamrock upon our hearts." And then Brenda Golden from County Meath. I went on holiday to Hartford in 1992. I was introduced to the IAHS, the club, the weekend I arrived. It was such a home away from home for everyone. And the fact that we're getting into that era now where we have Irish and Irish American crossover, I thought we might just do a little hand raising here session. Raise your hand if a great grandparent was born in Ireland. That's a lot.
Yours was.
Keep your hand raised if a grandparent was born in Ireland. And keep it raised if your parent was born in Ireland. And finally, keep it up there if you were born in Ireland. So you can see we do have quite the mix. I wanted to highlight any first or second generation stories of growing up here at IAHS.
Hi, my name is Noreen Moriarty. I actually grew up in the club. Both my parents were from Cary. They actually went down to New York. My mother was living in Hartford. My father was living in Manchester. They actually met in one of the halls down in New York and ended up finding out that they both were living in Connecticut. And then I say the romance went on, but Mom says something else. Just wanted to say for us, the Irish Club was very important. For my father especially, because he didn't really go back to Ireland very often. So I remember as a kid when they used to get like if someone went on holiday, getting the carrymen, and then it would be passed from person to person, and then they used to highlight, like used to circle, like if they thought that, Tim might like this story, they kind of like make a little note, or hey, did so-and-so die, just so you know that here's the obituary, or that, and it just was always really important in coming down. And you don't realize how much you miss it until you kind of grow up. And like my husband's from Cary also, and we do go back, but now that I'm getting older, I'm going back to where it's kind of comfortable. Like they get me, like the sense of humor, the storytelling, the bit of crack and the slagging. And you do miss it and you enjoy it. So now I'm starting to come back now that the kids are grown, and you're getting a chance to kind of enjoy it again, and you don't realize how much it's ingrained in you until you don't have it anymore. And it's kind of just, it was really important. Want to say? All right.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, we're moving into the new millennium, 2000. Quotes from members. Eileen McGee. One of the treasures of IAHS is that the members share their lives. We share in each other's joys as well as sorrows. And then I have a quote from Billy Egan. The club has always been very welcoming to me when I started playing there 20 years ago, and has been instrumental in preserving Irish culture in America and teaching it to the next generation. As far as the hall goes, the upstairs hall received a facelift in the early 2000s. We got new floors, walls, doors, and a new bar. Landscaping was created in front of the hall during 2003 to 2005 by Tommy O'Donnell and Ron Christ. It consisted of a memorial garden filled with flowering bushes and a large Celtic cross statue surrounded by Irish, American, and state of Connecticut flags. And at this time, a new Gaelic sports playing field was created in 2003. Joe O'Connor was the chairman. And then the senior Gaelic football program was rejuvenated in 2006. Now, the book has sports throughout the entire book, and rather to highlight it consistently, I put it to this point when it was rejuvenated in 2006. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass the mic over to Eric, and he can introduce the sports and the history.
Thanks, Alan. As I said before, the way that I made my way on to the history committee was through the Hartford GAA. I'll say this out loud, I am not Irish. One of the shocking things about the history committee chair, he's not Irish. So how did this happen? And it really is because of the GAA. I was very fortunate later in life to meet my lovely wife, whose father and many brothers, the Foleys, were important members of the Irish American Home and the Hartford Gaelic Football Club at the time that they played, and then we have since incorporated and become the Hartford Gaelic Athletic Association. And so my involvement here is through my children, and the stories of the years past were why I became involved, because my kids were going to play whether I wanted them to or not. It was handed down, and the history of Gaelic football and hurling here is so rich and is so intertwined in the history of the Irish American Home that one of the struggles I think that we as a committee had was how do we really tell that story either separate or integrated throughout the history book, because the men and the women who were part of the GAA, and as I said, the Hartford Gaelic Football Club, as it was known then, were such an integral part to the establishment of the club beginning in 1945. And the Irish American Home, the character of it is so intertwined with the character of the Hartford GAA. So I feel grateful that I have this opportunity to be involved. I coach U12 Gaelic football. I'm on the board for the last few years or so. My kids play. But this experience with the history committee has made my connection to my father-in-law so much more than it was prior to this experience. It did take some multiple conversations to get Mike to open up a little bit about some of the stories, and many of the stories are not appropriate for this venue, but it has been great, and it has allowed me to further understand the importance of this place to so many who came here and were able to recreate just a little bit of their home here in America. And as Alan says, in the mid-2000s, that first decade, the program had kind of gone fallow at that point. People grew up, people moved away, and we were lucky enough at a certain point that there was a new generation of Irish-born who are here and wanted to reinvigorate the program. And one of them is here right now, and he really doesn't want to talk, but I'm going to make him talk anyway. But before, just a brief introduction. His name is Stephen Miskell. He and Johnny Murphy were very instrumental in reinvigorating first the youth program and the senior programs as they came along. And we are now at a place where we have more than 120 players in our program, from youth all the way to our women's program, which is now going to add a camogie team here in 2025. And so we are at a great place. Our women's football team has been to nationals the last 2 years. Our youth program sent 7 teams to the Continental Youth Championships in Boston this past summer, where our U10 co-ed football team won the whole thing. So we are in a great place. And honestly, I think that if it wasn't for the efforts of Stephen and Johnny Murphy and Dick Edmonds and so many others, we wouldn't be where we are today. And really all that is a continuation of the efforts, as many people have said here this evening, of people who believed in this place and those games and the people that are involved. So without further ado, Stephen Miskell.
I think you said it all.
Thank you, Mary. My name is Stephen Miskell. I'm from County Galway, small village right outside of Tuam called Kilreardon. I moved here on the 3rd July 2004. Was on a beach July 4th, drinking beers and playing beach volleyball, and I was working the next day. But yeah, I came here, I lived in Norwalk with my cousin for like 6 months. Then I moved to Boston for a couple of years, and I ended up back here in Hartford again, where I found the Irish club. They just started the Hartford GA men's team, which I joined along with Johnny Murphy, who's one of my best friends here today. And while we were playing Gaelic football, we had no players. We could barely field a team. Myself and Johnny got the idea of starting a youth program. So we set it up, talked to the Irish club to see if we were able to do it. They allowed us to have the field on a Saturday. And we started off with, I think, 30 kids on a Saturday, and it grew in 2 years to like 90 kids from ages 4 years old up to 16. And I think the biggest accomplishment was in a year and a half when we started the program, so we started in 2009, a year and a half we had raised $30,000 to bring 20 kids to Ireland. And that's because of all the members here at this Irish club. That was able to help us, came to all the fundraisers that we had. We were able to travel to my hometown, play my club, and we were able to go to Clare, to Killaloo, to play Dick Edmonds' club. We were able to get tickets to the Leinster final, get a tour of Croke Park. We went from there to Cork, to Johnny Murphy's club, and then down to Kerry, to John O'Brien's club. It was probably one of the best trips I ever had. I moved here when I was like 23 years old. I didn't see Ireland. I'd seen Galway, seen Mayo, that was about it. So it was a great experience for me, and without all the people here, it wouldn't have happened. From then, we continued with the senior program, trying to build that up, and today we see probably 4 or 5 of them kids that we brought to Ireland out playing with the senior team, women and men. As Eric said, we've grown it from just a youth Gaelic football program to youth hurling program, men's team, camogie team, men's hurling. It's just gone crazy how big we've got, and no matter where we go, people know Hartford. Every city we go to in America, the name Foley comes up.
Usually, not always in a good way.
But yeah, I'm just grateful that I was able to find this place, able to find Gaelic football here, and much appreciated. I don't know, is that okay?
Great, thank you very much for that. I was interested in getting the point of view of somebody who had traveled over more recently, and I think we got a good idea from that. So now we jump to the 2000 teens, do they call it, or 10s? Well, anyway, I was highlighting the first food truck and craft beer festival in 2015. The reason why I was doing it was because food trucks continue weekly, whether outside or in our kitchen to this day. And I was hoping to have Emmett Moore tell his story, because it's really an American dream story. He's the owner of the Jefferson Fry Company, and he's heavily into the Hartford GAA, participating in that. So maybe if we ever do this again, we can get him there. 2000 teens also had something that we did not notice in the 2000 teens, and that was COVID-19 was lurking. And it led to challenges in 2020, resulting in the club closings. We were outside under the tent at various times. Book club's first meeting was under the tent, if I recall. And a lot of sanitizations, and I don't know who here was involved in that, but there was a lot of sanitizing going on. Anyone want to share any experiences from that?
I would like to say that, during COVID, which I guess I've been known as the COVID president, which is not great, but so I'm sitting by myself. But we're not a bar and we're not a restaurant, so we didn't really fit into any particular compartment when it came to how to deal with opening with COVID. And I have to give a tremendous amount of credit to Johnny O'Keefe, our permittee, because he had to figure out how we could do it legally and how we could still, stay under the radar with the government and, and still safely open. So that was really a big challenge. And also during that time, our HVAC system was very close to completely dying. And in fact, the last day the club was open, before we had to close for a couple of weeks to put the system in, it absolutely failed. And it was 88 degrees downstairs in the basement. So luckily, we had initiated the first ever capital campaign for the club. And it was through the generosity of so many people that we were able to raise $340,000 on really just one letter that went out and a GoFundMe page. And typically in fundraising, you really should send out 3 letters. And I think we were just so overjoyed that we were going to be able to take care of the HVAC that we didn't want to pester our members. But I think if we sent those 3 letters out, I know for a fact we would have raised $500,000, because that's just what our members are all about. And the idea was, were we going to take out a bank loan to pay for the HVAC? Were we going to use savings? We really couldn't do that because we didn't know if COVID was going to come back with a vengeance, and we didn't want to be out of money. And so the decision was made, the membership has to save this club. The membership is the one that's going to do it, and they did. And it's really, everybody was just so generous, and it's a credit to this club. It really is.
Okay, happy to put COVID behind us. We're in the 2020s and a little bit further in. We had another cultural renaissance, and I'm going to toot my own horn here because highlighting the Irish literary clubs are formed. Irish Book Club was established, as I had said, in August of 2020. Then we decided to put together the Irish Poets Society. That first met in February of 2022. And the reason why we did was because we had all these other cultural events, we had sports and everything, and we really sat back and said, what literary-wise is Ireland truly famous for? And it's their poets. So that was put together. And then that was followed in 2022 by Irish language courses beginning, offered by Maureen Corcoran, as I said, in 2022. And I know having these cultural type things are a requirement, at least for our status as, I guess, a nonprofit. So these are things that they're definitely required for us, but we get a lot of enjoyment out of these, and I invite everybody to come. They're going to be going, everything's going to be going monthly as of this year. We're still trying to zero in on a date to restart the Irish Poets Society. My last session was back in the summer, I believe, and Denise Coughlin has taken over. She had a meeting in November, and she's going to come up with a date for February, and then we'll meet monthly after that. We'll probably meet a little bit earlier the first time, 4 o'clock. We're going to try out different times, see if we can avoid conflicts with other things going on in the club, because it's kind of got to be a little bit quiet for us. And if it's a noisy day, it kind of kills the vibe. So, anyone from Poet Society, Book Club, who care to share their experiences or what the clubs mean to them?
Could you say something about the Poets Society?
Sure.
Yeah, I belong to the Poets Society. I really enjoy it. You know, in Ireland, going to school, we learned a lot of poetry, and I have a beautiful book saying what poems we learned in school. You know, so it was wonderful to come and to share some of those poems with the thing. And I really learn a lot. I love it. I mean, every month we have a different poet, every 2 months. You know. So it's very enjoyable. It's worth joining. So it's very good.
Okay, and that brings us to the end of the decades. At this time, if anybody has a story that they're dying to tell us that we haven't covered yet.
Seamus, anybody?
Here we go.
Terrible thing to get to talk last, but everybody's tired and wants to get the hell out of here and go home. Anyway, when I come out first, I came to New York, and I grew up in a small town, Donegal, called Ballyshannon, and there were 6 of us in the family. And in the 60s and 70s around our area, it wasn't great because the troubles were right in full swing, and I'm a retired chef, and there was a hotel in Balleek. We lived 2.5 miles from Balleek called the Carlton Hotel, and I was offered a job there. And it had been blowing up 2 times before, and this fellow, George Miller, that owned it, came in and he offered me a job. And my father says to me, he says, "Are you serious? You want to take a job out there?" Anyway, a week later it was blowing up. So my brother sent me a letter, and he says, "Why don't you come out to America?" So I came out to New York, and the first weekend I was here, I was in Queens Village, and there was 3 other families from Ballyshannon from the same, right around us, the McGoverns were their names. And they were in my brother's house on that Sunday morning, and then a couple of my cousins came in from Brooklyn, and they were there, and they were all chatting, and I thought they came to see me, but they didn't give a shite about me. They wanted the bacon and the sausages, because I bought about 25 pounds of sausages out and about 10 pounds of bacon. And all they kept saying, "Does he have the sausages? Does he have the sausages?" So anyway, we had a good feed of sausages, and then after a while, then I moved up here to Hartford, and I came down here, and the first 2 people that I met were P.J. Tierney and Billy O'Connor. And by God, you couldn't meet 2 better people. Billy O'Connor has a special place in my heart because he made me feel so welcome. And he says, if there's anything you need, young fella, he says, don't be afraid to speak up. And he says, you need to roll up your sleeves, he says, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and come down and do a bit of work here occasionally as well. And then met Noreen's father, Tim, and Johnny Foley, and Lil Halloran, and Eamon McKiernan, and many, many others, the Stauntons, Tommy, Neil Quinlan, and Jesus, they were great people. I mean, they just, well, there was nothing, the club was everything to them, as it is to me, to yous that are here. It was a special, Joe O'Connor said tonight, and I remember him as a young fella coming down. in Begley, and all them boys playing football. It was a great, and there was such a buzz here in them days. It was like, Christ, it was brilliant. We had the dances, to be about 300 people up here on the floor. We had the bands from New York, and it was like, it was just, I'd love to relive them days, because that Tommy Staunton brought in Brendan Boyer, and they had the big thing coming out, and some woman threw her knickers up on the stage. And it was, the laughs were just, it was a mile a minute, and it was all good crack. It was all, everything was, it was just a happy place. It was a home. And believe it or not, we had our arguments, there was a lot of rows, but at the end of the day, the club is what was important, that it survive and just get better and better. And this man, Mike, in front of me here, is a testament to that. He worked his butt off, him and his wife, everything that you'd see them always volunteering, always doing stuff. I look around and it just, the people I know, that there's nothing in it for them, just the love of the club and the love of being here. And I think that's what makes this place so special. It's a special, special place. And I do want to say, I did marry a woman from the States, but her aunt was Jimmy Golden's wife, Celia Golden. So, Eileen is a relative, and it's all good. It's a great place, and it's a great thing you did with the history. History is important, because we need to know where we came from and where we're going. But we have to look back and learn from the mistakes if we've made any. But anyway, keep up the good work, and thank you very much.
Well, it's 5 minutes to 9. We have time for one more story, if anybody wants to get that one out.
Will's got to say something.
That won't be 5 minutes though.
He's got to say something.
It won't be 5 minutes.
You willing?
What can I say? Having worked here, I have lots of secrets. I'm just like the parish priest. I don't tell you. But I have some great stories of how good the people were here. I remember a team coming up from New York. They had come from Ireland, and they were playing in New York, and they stopped here to play a game with us, and they were going on to Boston. We were always kind of like the halfway house when they were leaving from New York to go to Boston. So they came in, and in those times we didn't have a cell phone. So we got a phone call behind the bar that one of the young men who was in the team, his dad had died in Ireland. So the team came in, we talked to the Reverend Father who was with the team and said to him, there's a phone call that came in and this is the story. So they went into the office. Now to use the phone in those days was like buying gold, because there was no breaks in the money or anything like that. But anyhow, the priest went in and he talked, and he told the young chap, and the young chap went in and he discovered that his dad had died. So this young man was here, his dad had died. We took a hat, we passed it around, and we had the price of his ticket in 20 minutes. That's what this club is all about. That they're just there for each other. Another man who used to come in here, who shall remain nameless, Manny and I don't wanted to wring his neck, but the other part of me loved him. His mother died in Ireland on Friday night, and he got the word on Saturday morning. The banks weren't open on a Saturday. So he called me up and he said, Lil, I need money. I said, what do you need? I need this much, I'm flying home tonight. I said, come in here, I got enough cash, I'll give it to you, and when you come back, it'll be grand. Those were things that were done behind scenes that were just wonderful. The other thing is, when this committee started, I was the liaison between the committee and the GAA. Well, I passed it off, to a better looking fella. But the thing for me was, at one stage they were cleaning out in this club, and there was some pictures of GAA teams that were here in 1913. Now, if you stop and think, 1913, Ireland was not a united Ireland, or we were not The 26 counties didn't have a constitution or proclamation at that time. I have those pictures and I passed them on to Eric. So they were here. If you think that our native born people were playing our native game in this city, I mean, it's just unbelievable history. I love history. I learned to love it here. I learned more of this Irish Club than I'll ever learned in any college. Because so many people came in and stories that were told and things that were discussed. It was just a minefield, and the kindness and the goodness of people. And they were fantastic. I personally received it myself. When my husband passed away and I had the reception downstairs, I called the caterer that normally would do stuff here. He wasn't able to do it. But the food was brought in from Highland Park Market. I never had to lift my finger. Everybody stood in and stood up and helped. All the weddings we did up here. I had a young girl come down the other day, and she said to me, "You did my wedding." "How long ago was that?" says I. She says, 25 years ago. You know, I did a lot of weddings with Seamus Danaher. I'm not a chef, I'm not a cook, I'm not anything. I learned a bit from Seamus, a bit from Jerry Hurley, a bit from Peter Tierney, a bit from Michaels, and I put it all together with Conor Lilies. You know, I learned a little bit from everybody, and that was the gift. I left home at 17, I came out to my aunt, and I came here, and I walked into the end of the hall. The day I came to Ireland, I came to America, was the 3rd of February 1968, which incidentally was their having the first dance at the club. And my aunt was picking me up and my uncle in New York. Rather resentful, there's a dance at the club, there's a dance at the club tonight. Back from New York, they thought they would never get. So that is a very significant date for me. My aunt was a nun for 16 years, left the convent in South Africa, made her way to London, and from London she came to work for a family in West Hartford. That's how I happened to be here. So I came to this aunt that was a nun, a former nun. She always said I gave my best years to God and the rest to my husband and children. That was her motto in life. So I came mad as a March hare. I loved to dance, I loved hurling, I loved football. That was our mainstay in the home that I grew up in. So that's where and we continued it on here. I always loved the GA. I always loved the camaraderie. And I have funny stories to tell about different things. One of the appropriate ones I will tell. 2 men came in one night on a Saturday night. It was in the month of June. And I was a bit suspicious of them. I said, these boys are out now for nothing good. So they come in anyhow, they came up to the bar and they said, could I have a drink? I said, are you a member, sir? And he said, no. And I said, please sign the book. And the other man said, can I have a drink? I said, are you a member? No. I said, well, please sign the book. There were 2 liquor inspectors coming out to check. They were busting proms. But something, God Almighty, some of the poor people that went ahead of us put it in my head that night to, make sure that they signed. So I was always concerned about protecting the license. I drove them home from here long before Uber was popping up. I drove as far as myself and Pat Whalen drove as far as New London. There was a couple of guys here out from Ireland. They got a little too much. We put them into the car. They didn't even know where they were going. They didn't know their address. But we got them home. We got them home safe and sound. So those are the things, those are the memories that I have that are significant. Lots of other stories I will not tell.
Well, thank you everybody for coming tonight. I personally feel it was quite a success, and I think we all agree. I want to thank Maureen and Eric for joining us for our book club. I keep saying book club, but obviously it's much more than that. And for everybody else for coming. I got a lot out of this, and I hope you go home and tell some stories that you heard tonight to your families. Have a good night. Thank you.